Good morning, LBC Radio. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to remind you guys that if you are watching this on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, stories, wherever, please be sure to like and follow us. It helps us a lot. Listen, if everybody that has ever watched and I've ever invited to like this page actually liked our page, we'd be sitting pretty at 100 or 1,500 people. That is triple our current number, and it would help us greatly get the word out and raise awareness for this podcast. And if you really do enjoy what we do, please be sure to rate us on Spotify or leave us a review on Apple Podcast or here on Facebook as well. It really does help us, and it would mean a lot to me. With all that said, today I have on Mr. Logan Kurtek, a do-it-all kind of guy. York, PA's Logan Kurtek is drawn to the endless possibilities in music. While saxophone is his main gig, his excitement and curiosity has led him to play 7 different instruments and fostered the ability to make music on just about anything he touches. This skill has landed Logan in the recording booth and on stage supporting an eclectic mix of musicians, most notably in the roots and blues music scene. Currently, Logan performs with Lancaster-based artist Bobby Gentilo, spreading the word of Mississippi Hill Country Blues, adding a groovy and uniquely psychedelic twist. You can find Logan and all of his projects in the description below, or just look up at Logan Kurtek everywhere.
Everywhere.
How you doing today, man?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get into all of the stuff we have got today.
Yeah.
So, speaking from the start,
Okay.
where or when did you start to really get into music as a child? What grabbed you?
That's hard to say because I feel like I was probably young to the point where your like memories just developing. But I was always raised around music. Musical family. My parents were in the worship band at church. So I just remember being as a kid, going to church rehearsals where they're practicing for that Sunday service or my dad was a guitar player. Our house was we had guitars everywhere. And my mom played piano. She played flute. So it was just kind of like, that was the norm. We always listened to music. My parents would take us to concerts. And so early on, it was kind of like, it was just part of life.
So at what point did you participate in the instrument?
I mean, I would say as soon as I was, old enough, I started on piano. My mom taught my sister and I piano lessons at home. I was always interested in it. So as soon as I was old enough to start playing an instrument, it's like, okay, can I touch that? But yeah, so I started out on piano, and that was kind of like our first instrument. Did that for years. My mom taught us at home, and then once we got more further along, then we started going to other private teachers. And then I think as time went on, it was just like I would see other instruments too. Like I'd be sitting in the church when my parents were having band practice and kind of watching, there's a drummer up there and I'm like, wow, that drummer's like having a lot of fun. I want to do that. And the same thing with at one of the other churches, there was a saxophone player up there, and there was a saxophone player in my family too, one of my cousins. And I remember he had like a really old vintage like Mark 6 horn. It was super cool. I'm like, he was like one of my favorite cousins. I'm like, oh, he's got this cool saxophone. Like, yeah, I want to be like that. So, it was kind of being drawn to different instruments. But then I was part of a school district that really valued the arts, which is amazing. Not all school districts are like that, but
rare.
Was super fortunate to have live in an area where I had so many opportunities. And so once I was in the school system, it's like, okay, 3rd grade, you're allowed to pick an instrument. And so I picked upright bass.
A 3rd grader
choosing
an upright bass.
Yeah, it was the biggest one. It was the coolest one.
That's fair.
So yeah, I played that. And then 4th grade, they're like, you can pick a band instrument now. So I was like, okay, cool. Like saxophones, I knew that's what I wanted to do because my cousin played one. And then just kept like snowballing from there. Like I said, I saw that drummer in church, and then it was the next thing I know, the drummer's like, hey, I've got an extra drum kit in my house. Do you want it? Do you want to put it in your basement? So we went over to his house and we got this big drum set with tons of cymbals, and like my parents were like, all right, we're going to put it in the basement. And I don't know if they regret that decision or not because it was probably really loud all the time. Um, but yeah, again, it just kept snowballing and kept adding more instruments in because, I'd be playing one, and while I'm playing that, I'm looking around at what other people are playing, and I also want to play that one too. So,
So
yeah,
how many instruments could you say that you're competent in?
I would say, I mean, like probably around ballpark 7, and some of those it's kind of like, I play piano, but I also can play organ B3 stuff, which
Mm.
you're a piano player, correct?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that like a piano and playing a B3 and organ, they're
Completely different.
completely different.
Right.
So, yeah, so somewhere ballpark in there. And that's great, working in the studio too, is just to be
Yeah.
able to like kind of
Switch off and do
start.
whatever and overdub and all that.
Yeah,
jazz.
pretty much. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to be like, okay, my part's done now. It's just
And just
like,
sit and wait and watch.
yeah, it's like, okay, now what can I play?
So you did this, picked this up in school. Do you go to marching band? Do you do?
Yeah, so I would say I was primarily doing bass. So I played bass in the orchestra, and then I played saxophone through regular band, and then jazz band started to happen in middle school, and yeah. So I mean, that was the first time they introduced you to like, hey, you can like improvise too. You can stand up, take a solo, and play whatever you want. I'm like, whoa! So that's just kind of like that concept was amazing. So I started to kind of get more into that, and I was focusing more on saxophone, and was playing. I got a really good teacher. I got hooked up with Steve Fieldhouse in York, just incredible jazz musician from. I studied out in North Texas and came back up to the area here, and I mean there was like saxophone boot camp with him. So that went in through high school. So yeah, I did marching band. We had a big band program at the high school, which was amazing. Like I said, the school district really cared a lot about the arts. So I had Mr. Martini there at Central York, and the opportunities that those educators gave us was great. I mean, I remember having a class, I think it was my junior or senior year, where you had like a 90-minute block every day of like practice time. Like you'd be in a little practice room, you could work on stuff, whatever you wanted. We'd have recitals.
Wow,
Yeah, it was like almost like college level, and like we'd gotten that when we were, just high school kids.
that's awesome.
So, yeah. So between that and then jazz band, we'd have jazz nights where they would set the band room up like a nightclub and have lights, and it was recorded, and it was amazing. So, yeah,
That's
doing
really
that all
cool.
through high school, and then eventually into college. We got there. So I went to Lebanon Valley and then studied with Tom Stroman, who was a huge influence on, I guess, my playing and probably my character too. Every saxophone lesson with him was, you learn a lot on the instrument, but it was like a therapy session too. So kind of having like a guru like that in your life is super important.
Absolutely, especially in that time period.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Huge. Yeah. So he's a hero of mine, and hopefully maybe he's listening. I'll send him a text and say, hey, you should listen to this. Give him a shout out.
So, what do you
But
think is one of the most memorable lessons you learned in college?
I knew you were going to ask me something like that. um, huh. That's a tricky one. I don't know. I mean, you learn so. I think you learn so much, and like how to be flexible and how to um learn dealing with different people, and like at that point you're on your own, and it's just like kind of how to.
Represent yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and I think getting to college was a chance to like, okay, you've been around the same people all your life in high school. You're starting over fresh. You've got new teachers, new instructors, new friends, people that you're living with.
Your reputation starts at zero.
Yeah, yeah. And it was great. And I think that really gave you a chance to like decide, okay, who do I want to be? And as a person, like, what are my values? Your work ethic in school. So I think learning to be flexible and how to work with other people was probably the biggest thing in
It's a
college, I guess.
giant skill.
But there's so much
Yeah.
you learn in that amount of time too. Not just in the classroom, but just
Right.
about social things in life.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, being flexible is one of the most valuable things you could learn as a musician
Yeah.
because you
Mhm.
have to be flexible as a musician, whether it be instrumentally
Yeah.
or socially,
Mhm.
especially,
Yeah.
exceptionally. I have hard problems with words.
Yep. Sometimes they get twisted.
Yeah. So what'd you do after college?
So after college, I worked for a couple sound companies. So I went to college for saxophone performance, but also mainly my initial degree was for music recording, audio engineering. So I still do that stuff today. That's not my full-time gig, but right after college, I was doing live sound for a company, and I was working at Right Coast Recording with Bobby Gentilo. Um, so he's the producer and the head engineer down there. So getting into projects with him. Um, yeah. So and been there ever since. So it's almost, I guess it's been about 8 years since I graduated, and still running around, hanging at the studio. And
Did you ever do gigs in between your like college, collegiate career and all that stuff, or was it mainly just college focused?
during college,
Yep.
or yeah. So in college, I still in high school, I kind of came out of playing, which this is a huge chapter in my life too. So I don't know if we got to back up or not, but I was playing in my high school band was Little Ivory Blues Band, and yeah, we can't do this podcast without bringing them up. But so it was a blues band that we made in high school, and well, I wasn't even in it to begin with. I just had a PA system because my dad and I built a recording studio in the basement of our house. Once the drum sets and everything were down there, my really bad band from middle school was practicing, and so we got a PA system, and so my friends that were in Little Ivory were like, "Hey, we're doing a gig. We need some speakers. Like, you've got some, right? Can you hook us up?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll run sound for you." And I think I recorded them too, and we recorded an album at like a live show and mixed it, which is super cool. I think it was in 10th grade then. Um, but then they invited me in the band because like, you play saxophone too, right? I'm like, yeah. And it just kind of like ever since then, I mean, we played for years, and my best man at my wedding was the singer Aaron. I don't know if he's listening, or I think he's out on the West Coast right now, so maybe he's not awake yet. But yeah, so it's like the amount of experience and fun that we had that carried over into college too. Getting back to your original question, so we were still playing shows off and on with that band, and then with Bobby at the studio, because I'd interned there, we started a new band that kind of stole some band members from Little Ivory. So the bass player Alex Degnan, who still plays with us, and Aaron Lewis is he was one of the singers in that band too, and he was in Little Ivory, and he plays with us still too when he's around. Um, so yeah, but those two bands kind of overlapped in my college years. So we were still, I was definitely still playing on the weekends when I wasn't in school.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So getting back to Right Coast Recording,
Yeah.
tell me about all the stuff they do, what you do with them, and all that jazz.
Well, I guess that's where it comes back to like my bio, where I say I'm a do it all kind of guy.
Yeah.
I do lots of things at Right Coast. Um, so I recorded there in college for a project that I was doing by myself for school. I was submitting a jazz chart that I wrote for a composition competition thing. And then Bobby, we had known each other from Little Ivory days, and he was like, "Hey, like, you want to be in this band? Like, we're putting this funk soul band together." And I was like, "Yeah, it sounds awesome." And they invited me over for rehearsal, and I was like totally blown away by how cool that band was. And at that point, it was like you're just living at the studio. We'd have rehearsals twice a week. I would like get out and class and drive down from college, and then just hang there as much as I could. And then it was my semester where I needed to do an internship. I guess it was over the summer, so I stayed at Right Coast, and so I could still play with the band. And we recorded, tons of stuff, and Bobby and I formed a really good relationship at that point. And yeah, been there kind of ever since, working on whatever comes through the doors. And like like I said, do it all kind of guy. Whether I'm playing on projects, I've helped engineer for projects, I've done some mastering there, and we do a lot of video stuff now. So I would say the biggest thing that I contribute at this point to the studio is bringing cameras and lights and making videos. So
What do you think have been some of the most interesting guests to perform for or record coming through there?
Hmm. Man, it's been cool. Like just a huge range, especially the saxophone too. It's like you wouldn't some artists that I've played with, like locally. I think I did a project where I was recording for Tauntaun. So they're a Nielsen family band now.
Oh yeah,
Jordan
okay.
Capizzi, yeah. So I played on one of their records. So I think I played Barry on that. So that's kind of more of like your like singer songwriter indie rock, but like experimental weird sounds. So getting the saxophone in that. But right now we've been working on a project with a friend down in New Orleans, Tiffany
Tiffany
Pollock.
Pollock.
Yeah. So we've been working on a new track. So that's been cool. It's just like a huge mix of different things.
Yeah, Tiffany's amazing. If you haven't heard of her, look up Tiffany Pollock. Polla.
ACK.
Yeah,
Yep.
incredible voice.
Yeah, she's cool. She's a good time.
Good, very good time. Uh, so what do you think would be good advice for musicians who want to come into a studio recording? What should they prepare, and what's the process like for a new musician coming into a recording studio?
Um, I mean, it's again being knowing your song, and I guess sometimes though when you come into the studio, you might not have the song figured out yet. You might have a lot of the parts, but the fun thing about being in the studio is that's when you have the freedom and flexibility to write it. You
Mm,
know, and if you have a good producer that's involved, um, they can create what you have and just like enhance it and kind of help steer you into places to like this song can really blossom. Um, so I think having knowing your part and knowing your role, but also again being flexible and being open to suggestion and direction and just being like genuinely curious of like, okay, what can we do? And being excited about it.
that's awesome.
Yeah. I think that just coming in with that mindset allows you to like really create something cool.
And and also piggyback onto that, know your producer, know your master. Like for example, know your Bobby Gentilo. Uh, know what he's capable of. No, because you don't want to walk into a studio not knowing the people who run it, right?
Yeah. Right. You got to know who you're working with. And that goes with, musicians too.
Yeah, with
Like
anybody really.
having, it's like a cake. You got to have all the right ingredients or your cake's not going to come out right when you pull it out of the oven.
That's right.
So just having all the right people that you get along with, that, they're not there to, you know,
Exploit or
yeah, or just like, everybody to be friends and be in the same wavelength and then have a producer and or an engineer that is also genuinely interested and excited about your project. And you guys all have your stuff together on your end too. I mean, those are all the ingredients that once you start mixing that together, you have a lot of fun and create something really special.
so. Speaking of that, for you, have you ever made anything? Ever composed anything? You said something about composition competition.
Yeah. So yeah, I do some writing. I wouldn't say that's my primary gig is a songwriter. I've got friends that are really good at that. So
Right.
that's kind of why I list myself as a sideman because I love performing and I do write. Um, but yeah, only a few things. But if you're on my YouTube channel, there's a couple. I only have a couple uploads on there. I should do more. I will do more.
There
I'm
it
gonna
is. Yeah, you
announce that. I
will.
will.
Never say you. This is advice for
Not
anybody.
should. I will.
Never say should. Say you
Yeah.
will.
But
You
then
gotta
if I
do
don't
things.
if I don't follow through, then I'll be really upset with myself.
It gives you even more motivation to do
Yeah,
it.
right.
Say, oh, I haven't done it, but I
But
will. I'll do it
yeah.
right now.
Yep. So I do have tracks on there. But I like to co-write with people because again, like I've got some friends that are just incredible at what they do. So I just love they're gonna take ideas that I have and they're just gonna elevate them.
Elevate. Yep.
Um,
And you're gonna learn a lot.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah. And I guess one song that we wrote together, it was going back to Shrimp Boat days. I don't know if we could play
We
this
do have
track
Shrimp
here in a
Boat,
minute
yeah.
because I think people might be wanting to hear some music.
Sure.
So Shrimp Boat was just such a fun band to play with, and we all wrote this together in the studio. And you know, each like again, like I said, co-writing. You've got so many people with their strengths, and then if you can write as a crew and you create something awesome.
So what's the
So
song specifically about? What's the vibe?
so this song is very like I mean it's an instrumental track.
Okay.
It's all about just like this band was all about groove. Just like when we would be up on stage and for the first note that we would hit together, it's just you want the people to just move and be ready to dance. And that was the coolest thing about the first rehearsal. I remember sitting in with that band, just totally blown away about how like groovy they were. And so this song's pretty much all about that.
I said this is Shrimp Boat by Slicky Ricky.
Slicky Ricky, Shrimp Boat.
And that was Shrimp Boat by
Yeah.
Slicky Licky.
Man,
Slicky
that band
Ricky.
was fun.
Yeah, that's the composition process of that must have been really fun.
Yeah, it's cool because I mean, so many people in that band they had like come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and like we get together and like everybody adds their little secret sauce.
Speaking
And-
of the band, who was all in it?
All right, so Shrimp Boat was a big band, which yeah, I mean it was made it fun, but made it challenging trying to schedule things. But so Bobby Gentilo was the band leader, so he was on guitar there, and then Jason Hoffhines was on drums. He's just killing it, so good. I love playing with Jason. And then Alex Degnan's on bass, which we still play with now. We still play with Jason too when he's around, but he's down in Virginia now. So he comes up for some gigs with Bobby, depending on schedules. So yeah, Alex Degnan on bass, killing it, and then Derek Jenkins was on B3.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like pocket, soulful, just always playing the right thing. Back there was just super funky. He's a cool dude. And then saxophones, I was playing tenor, and then my friend Travis Burley was playing alto on that track too.
Nice. And then after that, you guys decided to, or did you decide to turn it into a big band arrangement?
Okay, yeah. So in college, I was taking a jazz composition course, or I think it was just a generalized composition course, but and that was also with Tom Stroman, and so we had to pick a song and we had to arrange it for an ensemble. And I was listening to you and Mike Bitts, and you guys were talking about the finale and like learning instrument ranges and everything. So, yeah, it's like learning that whole process of like, okay, I'm going to write a song. I'm going to arrange it for trumpets, 4-part trumpets, 4-part trombones, and like trying to learn what everybody's range capabilities are. So for that, I used this Slicky Ricky track. It was always in my head, kind of like, this could go that direction if we wanted to. So I wrote that in college, and we actually played it with the jazz band. It was like kind of the final for that project was to direct it. And
That's cool.
so pass out all the charts and then do like a quick run through, make sure everybody hits certain sections that you feel like you should probably brush up on quick as a group. And then, yeah, we recorded it, and I would stand up as the director and run the show. But sight reading that stuff, and especially when their charts still aren't perfect yet, because it's like your first real chart that you're making for a whole group. So there's some sections where like people are like, did you mean to write that?
Right.
So it's kind of like I would say it was like a demo version. All right. So then COVID happened. Everybody was trapped at home. And that gave me an opportunity to sit and be like, okay, I was off work. I still work, like I work in a hospital. So it was my day off, and I'm like, all right, I don't have anywhere to go. So I'm going to just go through my hard drives. So I'm scrolling through, and I came across the Slicky Ricky PDFs for all the charts. I'm like, you know what? I've got a lot of really cool friends that are at home right now with nothing to do. They all have computers and mics. So you know what? I'm just going to record my parts, and I'm going to send this everywhere, and then have my friends record, the charts. I mean, I cleaned up a couple things here and there and just say, hey, don't worry about this note, or switch this F sharp to like, I don't know, a G sharp or whatever. So I sent that out, and that was 2 years ago. And it still took me about 2 years to finish it, just getting distracted with other projects and, life.
Such is the life as a musician.
Yeah, get excited about a lot of things, and that ends up pulling you in 5 different directions, and then you don't necessarily finish everything. But this podcast was great because you asked me about it and said, what do you have that you could bring to the table? I'm like, you know what? I will finish that still. So I finished it. I think it was like last week. I added the last thing we wanted to add was my saxophone solo, and I waited until the last minute to put my solo on top, and then I mixed and mastered it last week, and so we've got a version of it now. This is going to be its world debut.
This is Slicky Ricky's
Slicky Ricky,
Big Band Arrangement,
the Big Band Edition
by Logan Kurtek.
Yeah.
was that was awesome. That's
Thanks,
what
man.
that was.
Yeah.
Slick Ricky's Big Band Arrangement by Logan Kurtek. Dude, what was it like as a high school person getting up to direct your own piece? Was that nerve wracking for you, or you just
I think so. I think I was more nervous. Like this was in college that I wrote this. I think this was my junior year. I did
oh
it.
gotcha?
Um, I think the most nerve wracking part of it was like in my head. This sounds like it's gonna be cool, but once it's on paper and in front of 30 people, is this gonna sound like a train wreck? I feel like it might.
Right.
You never know. Um, but yeah, it came out. I mean, this version has a couple tweaks in it. Just harmony wise, maybe one note worked a little better, but it was pretty close to the original. And yeah, but this one was fun because I got to handpick like my friends too. Yeah,
That's awesome.
now and all my friends probably haven't heard this yet. So this was like the first time, other than Jason. I sent it to Jason the other day because he said he wouldn't be around to watch it live. So I'm like, okay, you'll get it in a text. But yeah, so on keys that was Aaron Trissot playing piano. So I hope you enjoyed that, Aaron. And I mean, that had Jonathan Lacey on trombone, and AJ Myers is playing all the trumpet parts, and Jason Hoffhines, he was on drums there, and then my buddy from Colombia, Eduardo Oviedo, he was playing all the hand percussion stuff. And who else did I send this to? I played bass on it.
Okay.
I played guitar on it also. I think that might have been it. I think that might have been the crew. And if I'm forgetting someone, I'm sorry. I'll let you punch me later.
I was gonna say, that's awesome. I wish I could do stuff like that. Because I'm not
can.
I can. I know I can. But it's a lot of jazz theory and a lot of arranging stuff that I haven't gotten into yet that I really do want to get into.
Yeah, I mean, you know the concepts, like the core with composition of instrument ranges and
Yeah.
everything like that. And then at that point, it's just like
Doing stuff with
yeah, and you're a piano player too already.
Right.
So much of these harmonies and everything. I mean, I wrote it all on piano. If anything, I wrote out sections all in piano first. So then I would just take those notes and transpose them to where they needed to go. 'Cause whenever you're arranging stuff like this, it's not like you're working with multiple transpositions.
Mm-hmm.
So altos are in E flat, baries in E flat, tenors are in B flat, and you got trumpets and trombones are in there. It's like after a while,
That's why
you can't. Yeah, you have to start somewhere all in one world.
Yep.
Then transpose it out and hope that it's in the right range.
You know, that's why I don't know if you've ever heard of MuseScore. We were talking about it before
Yeah.
bits, but you can put that in concert pitch, and it puts it all in concert whatever, and then automatically transposes.
Automatic
it after.
transposes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a,
I forget how I did it. I think I did this all in Finale, but I'm pretty sure
hate finale is the passion.
I transposed it out myself, probably because it was part of the process of just like
And it
understanding that.
It does help.
Yeah.
It does help. It's mind boggling and it's frustrating, but it does help.
Yeah. But that stuff is, you have your software to help with it. But once you start getting down to like, okay, now we're looking at theory and what chord. Okay, so we're doing this chord, but is it, how do I want to arrange notes? What notes do I want to put in this for? What color do I want? And that's where it starts getting tricky, and there's more theory involved, and
you get the different levels of jazz that are involved.
Yeah. Which I started that super young. Like I said, Steve Fieldhouse, when I took saxophone lessons as a kid with saxophone boot camp, he, I mean, from a middle school age, I mean, it was very driving hard on the theory, working on scales, knowing the difference, like, talking about dominance and 2-5-1 progressions and everything, how everything relates. And then you get into the college level and it's like, okay, dominant's cool, but now let's alter dominance. How are we altering them? And then you get all these beautiful color tones that you can stack on top on these extensions. So
yeah, if you want to learn theory, do it earlier than later. It's because it gets so complex, and also the way that the brain works in regards to learning. You learn better when you're younger. Make sure you learn theory young if you want to get into like jazz and stuff, because that stuff is complex.
Yeah,
or it can.
But
get complex
you can also you can learn that stuff at any point. Obviously,
you could. Yeah, you can.
And I think honestly, like I went back to school again, did a career change, and it's funny, like going back to it a second time, I felt like I did learn differently.
Mm.
as I was more mature, I guess. I approached it differently. Well, not that I didn't take school seriously when I was younger. It was just a totally different perspective, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like in college, like I learned how to learn. And then as you get older, it's like, okay, here's this thing that I need to figure out how to do. I know how my brain works when I'm trying to absorb material, whether that be music or reading a book, learning how to do something, watching YouTube tutorials, how to fix your car. I don't know, like anything. Like
Yeah.
you eventually learn how your brain's wired, for better or worse.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So we also have some tracks by Bobby Gentilo himself.
Yes. Which we'll get there.
We'll get there. Okay.
Yeah. So we Bobby and I, like I said, we've been doing projects together forever. And Bobby had been working on his record for a long time. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder here though, because here's the thing. We're gonna get him on this podcast. So I don't want to tell Bobby's story.
No, not at all.
If he's still watching. I don't want to steal your thunder. But I'll just talk about my role in this and kind of just in general, like it's kind of steering into that sideman role, which I've found that's my comfort spot. Oh, I see Eduardo's there.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, man? Tuning in from South America, love it. Yeah, I think as a sideman, that's been my comfort zone because I know I'm not a singer songwriter. Nobody wants to listen to me sing. I sing to my dog in my house, so that's important, and I'll sing backups if need be. But you tuck me in the mix.
Right.
I know my pitches. I'm good there. I just, I know better singers. So I just love being able to support those people and find my place. And, kind of in Shrimp Boat, I learned a lot about how to fit in musically, what makes a band tight. And
talk about
learning those skills has been invaluable. I mean, really. Lets you play with anybody, doing anything, even though that was a soul band, just learning how to take your instrument and bring it to the table when you're around other musicians.
So what do the skills look like? What are some of the things you have to think about? What are some of the things that are mistakes that maybe you've made in order to figure that out? Or
I would say the biggest thing, there's a lot of important things. And that's what makes music so much fun. Groove. Time, rhythm is huge. Being in the groove is the number one thing in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So, and playing with that band, as a group, you sound like one. And you learn to be in that pocket, and that can be, the pocket is kind of, people always talk about that, like, yeah, the drummer's in the pocket. It's like, okay, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
And at the same time, that's not like, that doesn't mean you're trapped to this grid of like playing precisely on each metronome beat, because it's a spectrum when you're playing a groove. It's live, but when you're all locked into a tempo, you're locked into a drummer's groove. That's the first thing that has to happen to play together, and that's the first thing that a listener or an audience member is going to notice is like when that band hits that first hit together. People are like, ooh, that was tight. That's what they mean. It's like everybody is on it. They're feeling the same thing. And the audience feels that. So yeah, bringing that into the studio, it's the same thing. When you're taking solos, it's the same thing. Just having that groove and that pulse in everything you do. And it's a big Victor Wooten thing. Everything's about groove. I've got a groove sticker on my saxophone case. And you can play the wrong note. If you play it in the right time with the right groove, someone might notice it, but
it's just jazz at that point.
Yeah, it's just jazz, man. No, but I mean, that's huge, and so I would say that was number one for me, is learning that. And I learned that a lot from playing with Bobby and Jason on drums, having that tight of a pocket back there. It's life-changing.
Even like especially if you want to walk up on stage with somebody, and I remember this is thank you Bobby for giving me this experience. I asked if I could jump on keys at the Roots and Blues Jam Fest, and I hopped up there. Granted, I I had known what was going on. I know most of the regular blues forms, like you get your 12 bar and
Yeah,
whatnot.
there was a lot of 12 bar happening that night.
It was a lot of 12 bar, and I was
Yeah.
like, I can do that. I know how to do that. But there was one song. It was just E forever,
Yep.
and it scared the life out of me.
That is some of the hardest stuff to play and solo over. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
one chord jams is not easy.
Not easy, and it's scary because everyone started looking at me to do a solo. I'm like, I don't know how to solo an E. I don't know how to solo a one key,
Yeah.
and that's stuff that you have to learn. So all I did was you were watching me. I was just staying on the rhythm. Just
Mm-hmm.
what was it? E to G to E back again.
Maybe.
Well, whatever it was,
Yeah.
that's what I did, and I stood there and I tried to whatever licks that I knew in E, but I couldn't, and so it was a gigantic learning experience for me. Of course, everyone said I did great, and I was like, "Yeah, awesome, thanks," because that's what you do when you say you did great. You just say thank you. You don't say anything else.
Yeah, right.
Because you don't want to take away the magic, right?
Yeah.
But you better believe it now. I can solo jam on E or in any key.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't gonna let that ever happen to me again.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. I mean, obviously it's hard soloing when the chords are moving by super fast.
That's true.
If I'm on a bandstand and someone's calling giant steps, I'm probably going to get off and hide under the table. But at the same time, yeah, there's so much space. It's like, okay, we got one chord. Here's a groove. Do something with it.
Right.
I do need a solo for 1-2 minutes. I don't know. But yeah, so and that's where you kind of rely on, okay, rhythm and then taking a melodic idea. I mean, there's 10,000 ways to approach it, but
right.
you just start thinking about other things. It's like, okay, I got this one scale, or okay, do I live in more of a rhythmic thing right now?
Yeah.
One note solo kind of thing. Okay,
Yeah.
after a while, do I introduce this little idea, and then do I transpose that idea up a fourth, up a fifth, up a half step, kind of go outside for a second, come back, like, that's just a good thing to practice. You just get like a YouTube video on of like, and I do that from time to time too, because it's, again, like I said, it's a skill, even though it sounds simple. Just go on YouTube and finding, like, you can find a groove at just about any tempo and any key on YouTube, and it'll go for 10 minutes. It'll loop. Turn it on. Do that with comfortable keys so that you can get your ideas and feel good about your playing. And then start doing that in uncomfortable keys. I'm going to do the same thing, but in A flat. No.
Right.
But yeah, and just start moving it around.
Yeah, it's an invaluable resource, YouTube. With anything, you can look up any song, you can look up any whatever, and have it at your fingertips to play along to or to groove to. You can even slow down the time on YouTube if you really want to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you start to lose quality, but
it's still there.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how I, there's certain solos that I really like. If I want to transpose it or transcribe it, yeah, YouTube's slow down function.
Yeah.
Yep. That's an important part of the process, is slowing it down first. Because if you play it sloppy and learn it sloppy, then it's going to be stuck in your fingers, and it's going to take 5 times longer to unlearn that and relearn the right thing. So
learn it right, slow down your metronome.
Yeah.
And then get back up to speed.
And not saying I'm great at that, because I want to hit the ground running first all the time. So
every musician does.
Yes, it's it's a definitely check yourself. Like, slow down first, you'll get there.
Discipline yourself. It's another skill that musicians have to learn is discipline, because if you're not disciplined in your training and your practicing and your whatever, it's gonna be a lot harder.
Yeah, and I think, and that's 100% true. Just spending time with your instrument, or your craft, whatever that is, not even musically.
Oh, not even musically, yeah, for sure.
Spending time with it. I mean, that's the only way you get better at it. But I think coming back to music, practicing, it's super important. It was super important for me to always do something that you absolutely love while you're practicing. So instead of saying, like, okay, I'm going to practice my scales. It's like, okay, we're going to do a bunch of scales now, and cool, they're important. They're not fun. You don't like, you're not afterwards, you're like, I mean, I guess you can be proud of yourself for grinding through it, but I like to always end my practice sessions with, I started doing that in college, but with tracks that like I could play along to, or nowadays it's like, cue up YouTube and something that's comfortable that you know you can play really, really well, or something that you really enjoy doing, and that's what you end on. Because then you end on a high note. You feel really good about yourself. You feel like, yeah, I did that. I had a good time. It's a good way to end. End on a high note, and that'll bring you back next time.
Yeah. And even then, practicing scales, you can practice scales in all sorts of different ways. You can swing it. You can turn it into funk. You can, because that's gonna help you apply those scales to different genres as well.
Yeah, yeah. So when I do scales now, I'm queuing up YouTube and I'm finding some kind of cool groove that I'm gonna enjoy playing to. Whether I'm doing, just running straight up and down major scales, or if I'm doing, I don't know, a half whole ultra dominant scale, whatever. Just like make it fun, and then at the same time, you're subconsciously working on that groove staying in the pocket thing, which is so incredibly important when you're playing with people.
What do you think is the hardest genre? What was the hardest genre for you to adapt to as a saxophonist?
I mean, I definitely would say jazz has been the most complicated. And I would never say, I did study jazz in college. I would not call myself a jazz saxophonist. I've studied it, but I know so many guys that are so good at it, and I'm not stealing that title from them.
That's fair.
Yeah. Just because there's so much to learn. But I would say going back to, applying saxophone to a certain style of music, I would say it was challenging at first playing the hill country. So going back to, kind of what I'm doing now, playing hill country blues, it's funny. People are like, oh yeah, it's blues. It's a 12 bar. It's this or that. It's like, I mean, sometimes, but it's a very trancy blues. I mean, they can play a groove for 30 minutes, and you got to keep it interesting and fun. And that's their party music down there in Mississippi.
Really?
Like if you're out at juke joints out in the country, like people they've been whatever out working all day, or it's their weekend, that's their night out. Like they're going to have a good time, and that's the music they're playing. They all get together, whether it be at some Red's juke joint or whatever, and that's how they have fun. So, but going back to like applying saxophone to that is when you go to those shows, juke joints, whatever, saxophone is very rare to see there. So, primarily I was a tenor player. Started out in alto. I played alto for years and years. College, I kind of transitioned to more tenor. And then shrimp boat, I played more tenor. But now I'm on Barry because, well, one, Barry's just cool.
It's cool.
It looks cool on stage.
Good sound.
Good meaty sound. It's a lot of fun to play. But I found that in hill country, I was able to just blend with the bass guitar. Just double the bass guitar's line 100%. And then it almost added like this distorted bass thing. So I kind of left the role as a saxophonist and just was kind of in bass world, which I play bass too. So it's like that was familiar to me. But having to like do that, support that with your lungs for a long time was challenging. And I think being able to know that like, okay, my role is to play this bass groove, not to play anything else. Don't step on anybody's toes, because these guys from Mississippi have been playing, like R.L. Boyce has been playing forever and ever and ever. Like, it's their show. You're supporting them. And then as a sideman, it's the same thing. Like you're not stepping on other people's toes. You're there to elevate them, support them, and make the group sound cool. And we did a festival with RL, and that was my first time really doing it. And it's like, he flew up from Mississippi, and I'm there on this big festival stage to back him up. And you just got to get in the zone. And it was tricky because they're hard to follow sometimes too. You're playing, and you might be staying on the one chord forever and ever and ever. And then we're going to the 4 chord, but we're not going to do it on the downbeat. He's going to do it on, I don't know, beat 4 of whenever. It's just like all of a sudden you're there. So you're being flexible, ready to react, and using your ears. Get your ears trained is huge.
Absolutely.
I mean,
knowing when a chord is going to move is so important.
And being able to pick up and know that, okay, we just went to the 4, and being able to hear that is a good skill to work on for sure.
And being self-aware as well, because the audience wouldn't realize it, but there were so many cues that the lead guitarist or the singer or
Mm-hmm.
whatever just gave, showing that we were gonna move or this was gonna
Yeah.
happen or a beat was gonna happen.
And sometimes they're super subtle, and you
Some
only
they're
pick that up.
super subtle.
Yeah, you only pick that up after playing with people for a long time, and everybody's a little different too.
Yeah.
So and that just comes with hanging out, having a good time, playing together. So yeah, but learning that blues stuff, I think that helped tame my ideas in my mind in a good way, because sometimes it's, my brain's just exploding with like 500 different things and it doesn't stop. And playing that hill country stuff, you have to block all that out. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this now. It's like, no, that's not what's right. That's not what's right for the song.
There's a time and a place.
Yeah. And having that self control, then those ideas, when it's your turn to solo, makes it that much more special. Like, I have something to say now and it's my turn to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, everyone in the band's looking at you and they want you to solo. And then when they then support you.
Yeah.
And then you can get your ideas out because it's your turn. And then you come back and then you support them again. It's just the whole like push and pull, learning to work with each other.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Happening.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to step on the toes of whoever's talking per se.
And that's what's magical about it.
Yeah. And that's something that you must learn. You must learn. You can't play saxophone the entire time, or you can't play a quote unquote accessory instrument the entire time, unless, of course, you're filling in like a bass roll or something like that.
Yeah, right.
But you have to find your times and places where you can shine in and
Mm-hmm.
cut through, or not necessarily cut through, but like elevate the piece itself. And then you have your turn to rip and do all the things you ever wanted to do
Right.
in that time, and then you step back and hear the response to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when you play with musicians at higher levels or at all levels, people respect that.
Yeah.
They know that they feel that you're giving them respect, and then they return that to you.
I was gonna say, if you're a person who's stepping on people's toes, they're not gonna give you that solo opportunity because it's like, well,
you're trying to this whole time.
Yeah, right. It's like you've been trying to this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Be respectful of your frontman.
Yeah. Yep. And then ultimately you're there to sound as one.
Right.
And that is the best feeling. And that's what I loved about playing with Shrimpo and playing with Bobby's band now, is like we worked so hard and worked with that other band to sound like one unit. And when you're locked in and we could be playing the most simple, I could be playing whole notes on the saxophone, me and Travis in that, in Shrimpo, or now it's like I'm playing whole notes, but I'm locked in with the bass guitar. When we're all like that, it is literally my favorite feeling when playing, because it's like, man, we sound good. This is awesome. It's not the solos. I like soloing, but that's my favorite.
How long does it take you to figure out a set, or are you just one of those musicians that steps up and like, oh, I got it, I can figure it out?
What, figure out like the set list, or
like, say if someone calls this song everybody knows, but if someone calls like House of the Rising Sun, and maybe you've never heard of it before, but they start playing it, can you pick it up immediately, or?
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is definitely more ear training based. So yeah, if someone calls up a song that maybe I've never heard before, it's again, like, respect. You stay back, you know your place, and you use that as an opportunity to like
Listen.
I'm just gonna listen. And the beauty of playing other instruments too is I can look, and without having to like, hey, what key are you in? I just watch their hands.
Yeah.
I can watch the piano player's hand. That gets tricky if you're trying to look upside down, if you're on the opposite side of the piano. But after doing it a few times, you can see, okay, I see his fingers there, and we're definitely on the root right now. So okay, we're definitely in, I don't know,
whatever key.
We're at E right now, or G, or whatever. Yeah, and then you can start hearing the chord movement behind. And if you've worked on ear training like that too, and that comes from just doing it, or just listening to music, figuring it out on your instrument at home, sitting down at the piano or your guitar, whatever you play, and knowing that, okay, I'm on the minor 2 here, or that's what the 4 to 5 motion sounds like. Then you take those skills when you're up on stage supporting somebody, or times where they're like, hey, we got this guy here, he's he plays saxophone, we want him to be a part of this song, come on up here. And you're like, oh no
I
never played with you before, here we go. And then, but if you go up there, play it cool, and use your ears, you'll get through it.
I'll say, and being tame is another, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, tame
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be way more
You
obvious.
go up there and play some wild stuff, and you don't know what key you're in yet.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I don't think anybody would really do that, but
No, but some people get so scared that they have to do something like that.
Right.
You don't have to. You can just stick on the one note that you figured it out.
Right.
Because you can do so much with one note. The playing, the dictation, what there are so many terms that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but
That's
you can
fine.
do so many things.
Uh-huh.
I just think about like BB King or some like Kings of Blues, what they do with just one note on their guitar.
Mm-hmm. There's so much soul in that kind of stuff.
So much soul.
I mean, you play it with a purpose.
So
and in the groove.
Let's hear what you had to say on Gentilo's Ghost.
Yeah. So I took all those kind of skills and that playing, saxophone with like groove based stuff and mixing in some hill country. And Bobby had been working on his music for a long time. He was supporting a lot of other musicians, and as a producer or also as a sideman to them, he had a whole backlog of songs that he had been writing over time, collecting dust on a hard drive. So we started to bring these to life, and that kind of led to his record. But for this, it was like a lot of experimentation and finding sounds, and we ended up kind of landing on this song, which is called Ghost, which I believe Bobby wrote. I think this is the one. It was like late at night, probably 2 a.m, which is his like normal working hours, in the studio by himself, and just guitar amps cranked. And I think this is the song where he said that after he got done playing this line, I don't know if whether he was just recording it, he like felt this like presence, like this hand on his shoulder, and turned around. Obviously there's no one there,
Of course.
but I'm fairly certain our recording studio is haunted, and they've been friendly.
They've been friendly.
Sometimes you're sitting there mixing like late at night. It's scary to mix with headphones on at nighttime. I'll tell you that. Like if you're checking a mix quick, like you just want to hear it in the cans, and you're in there by yourself and it's like 1 a.m. You like put the headphones on and you're like, I can't hear if anything's walking up behind me. But it's kind of a place that like sometimes you'll just hear like the thresholds, like the doorways, just like someone walked through the room, and you turn around, there's nobody there. So, it's probably just like a humidity, like,
right.
Like
I could go
swelling of doorways and whatever, but it makes for a good song title. So this is Ghost. This is off of our record, or Bobby Gentilo's record. And yeah, hope you enjoy it.
That's amazing.
Thanks, man.
That's Ghost by Bobby Gentilo featuring Logan on the saxophone. Where can
Yeah.
people find you and see you and hear
So
you?
yeah, you can follow me. I'm easy to find. I'm the only Logan Kurtek out there that I know of. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, just look me up there. I've been playing with Bobby Gentilo. So you can find him. Our website www.bobbygentilomusic.com. Or actually, no, just bobbygentilo.com.
It's GINCILO.
Correct. Yeah, and that's in the link in the description.
Yep, as well.
So you can just click instead of trying to type it in. And then he's on socials too, so we're good at posting up things coming here soon. What's today? Friday. Tomorrow, Lancaster, the Balloon Fest.
That's right.
Yeah, we're playing there tomorrow. Our set's at 6:00. We're gonna be on the main stage there. We got the full band for that. That's gonna be featuring so Christy Angle on drums, Alex Degnan on bass, Nate Young's gonna be on keys, me and Bobby. So that's gonna be a great time. I'm looking forward to that. It's supposed to be beautiful too.
Yeah.
And then we'll be at Columbia Kettleworks the following weekend. It's an afternoon. They're having a benefit event there. Don't know all the details on that, but I know it's 1 to 3 p.m. It's gonna be at Kettleworks in Columbia. So yeah, we'll post more. So if you need to know.
And if you want to follow us, you can find us at The Story Corey Rosen, CORYROSEN, on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever you do, you're streaming or listening. We're even on YouTube. We're ending out our radio time, but we're going to keep going on Facebook Live. So if any of you guys watching on Facebook Live have any questions for Logan that you want to be answered, please be sure to ask them in the comments. With all that said, we're going to get the people on the radio back to the radio. All right. So, first general question number 1.
Let's talk about that song a little bit.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. That's completely right. So
the radio people get out of this. So
yeah. Sorry
they missed that, but yeah. So that track was Barry Sax. I think this is probably one of the first songs that we recorded saxophone on for the record, and this with the Barry Sax, we were just trying to find ways to make it different and fun. And I actually, B3 organ is one of my favorite instruments.
Really?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's so cool. And then, especially with like the spinning Leslie cabinet, right? So for you non-organ B3 peoples, so you've got your organ and that runs through a speaker cabinet, but the Leslie has a rotating top horn. So all the high end of the organ comes through a horn that spins, and then there's a big speaker on the bottom with a drum deflector that also spins, and you can change the speed of that fast and slow, and it kind of gives it that wobble sound.
It's like a vibraphone almost.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It's just a really cool instrument, like actually from like a design standpoint, it's incredible. All like belts and pulleys and stuff inside of it. So I was like, okay, well, what if we plug cords and adapters and go into one of those, the preamp pedal, because you can run guitar cabinets through Leslie's. I'm like, all right, so what if we put the saxophone through it? And we tried it, and it was wild sounding. I mean, it was crazy. So we recorded Ghost with saxophone going through a Leslie cabinet, and we actually toured once with that. We drove down to Memphis, and we were down in Clarksdale, in Holly Springs in Mississippi, and we had this big Leslie cabinet in the back of the van, and it was a bad idea.
Oh?
Because it just went. I mean, it was amazing. It's so cool on stage. You turn it so everyone can see the insides of it spinning around, and they're like, wait a minute, that saxophone's going through that box? And because it looks like a big piece of furniture on stage. So it's super interesting from like a show perspective, but it's not practical carrying it. And especially, they're fragile too. There's tubes in there. You've got little belts and pulleys that, wear and tear, and plus the thing's like, 70 years old too. So now I'm much more condensed. I have a pedal board, so I have a little Leslie simulator. I have the Strymon Lex for you pedal nerds out there. So I run my sax through that, and a few other pedals to just kind of add some extra flexibility to the instrument that I can't go otherwise.
Now, do you have like an action or a microphone on your saxophone, or do you have to play into a microphone?
So I do have a clip-on mic, but I tend to prefer playing with a mic on a stand, and that kind of comes back to just being able to fit into a a band in like the one unit sound, I love the ability to be able to back away from the microphone and like blend myself. Or if I know that, okay, there's this super low note that I'm going to hit and coming out of this horn is going to be blasting loud, but I want to hit that note, but the band's quiet, then if the microphone's attached to your bell, there's
no backing up.
There's no backing off on that one. So I like having a mic that I can kind of mix myself as I move further and closer away. So yeah, I do that, and then I go into a Eventide mixing link pedal, which is a great pedal for vocalists too. It's actually primarily, I think it's for vocalists, because you can plug a microphone directly into it. It's got a preamp, so you can set your gain, bring it up to line level, which now can go through all of your guitar pedals. So a singer can utilize like, the whole guitar pedal section at your local guitar shop, add that to your arsenal. And then it's got a direct XLR output that's super clean, no noise, and you can send that right to your engineer. And it allows you to blend that too. And then you can turn it on and off your effects loop. So yeah, I go into that, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's addicting. It's probably, my wife probably doesn't like it when a new box shows up from Reverb. She's like, what did you buy now? Nothing.
It's any music.
Just an empty box.
Yeah, just an empty box. It's for the cats. Relax. it's
for the cats.
It's for the cats. I feel like it's every musician's spouse's worst nightmare, is just seeing a new delivery from like Amazon or whatever, and it's like,
no, she's cool. She's supportive of it. So, but I usually
good.
have to explain. This is why.
It's
more for like guilt on my end. I have to explain. I feel like I have to. She deserves that explanation.
Right. This is because I do this,
and I played this gig, and that paid for this. So yeah.
And I can write it off if I want to. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So, what do you think has been one of the best pieces of advice that anyone has ever given you?
Okay, so I had this, like I said, my day job isn't music. That's my evening and weekend job. But so I work in a hospital, and so I work in X-ray, and I was in the OR. We were doing a case up there, and one of the sales reps for the device that was in that case, we would chat a lot. He was a great guy, and he came up to me one day and he said, "Can I just give you some advice because I like you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he just told me, he said, "Look, be the guy that whenever you walk into the room, whatever you're doing, whether it's work or like you're coming into the studio or anything, be that guy that when you walk into the room, everybody's glad you're there." Because they can trust you. Then you don't have hangups. You're not gonna, you're gonna do a good job, and you're not gonna cause problems. You're not like, you get along with everybody. You're fun to be around. He said, just always strive to be that person. I'm like, wow, that applies in so many different.
It applies everywhere.
Everything.
Yep.
Whatever you do, like, go in 100% and care, and be that person. And people are like, yes, he's here today, or we've got him.
And that's gonna make you successful way more than any skill could ever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the best guy to be around, or if they're like, I want to go hang out with Logan because he's a really cool guy, or I trust this guy, or that's going to get you so much more opportunity.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you're the best person in the world that does that. You have so many other great things that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
That, that's what makes you good, is because
if you're a great player but a horrible person to work with, chances are you're not going to be working with a lot of people.
You're not getting the gigs. No. People, we do this because we love it.
Right.
So we want the people we surround ourselves with, we want them to add to that experience.
Musicians, and granted, anything you do that you love shouldn't feel like work.
No.
Right. And the time when making music feels like work is when you're working with people you do not like.
Well, and there's times where like it's gonna feel like work to an extent.
Oh, for sure.
There's times where we're tracking something in the studio, or I'm trying to write something out, or I mean live. Oh my gosh, we're doing shows and like, oh, we got to provide a whole PA package with like monitors running our own sound. It's like, okay, the day before I'm loading cable trunks. Like it feels like work,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing all my counts. I got checklists but you do it and you put that effort into because it's like you care about your craft and like you want to be at that high level that you're proud of, you know? And then if you do that on top of having a good time and being surrounded by great people, again, like you've got the recipes to have something really special.
I'm curious. You said in the medical field you work in like X-rays.
Mm-hmm.
Has it ever come helpful for you if a musician injures themselves or whatever?
No, but I think the most, probably the coolest thing is like it's something to talk about. And I think it's made me really well rounded for the lack of a better term. But like, you know, I just feel like I've had a lot of really cool experiences. I've met a lot of really cool people. And I think in a way that's like made me enjoy talking to people. And then if I have patients that, you know, we get into conversation with, like I feel confident in conversation. We can joke about things, or I notice they're listening to music in the room, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that Debussy? Are you listening to Debussy like classical right now? And they're like, yeah. And then we'll just get into this whole conversation about like music, and yeah, I played in orchestra in college, and it's great to just be able to have those life experiences to just connect
Full
with,
on. Yeah.
just to connect with people.
So, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen people make, or that you have maybe made yourself in the music industry, and how can we curb that for future generations?
Ooh, mistakes. I feel like this is like a job interview. I gotta find a way to turn this into like a positive. Like I'm aware of what it is, and
Well, you did it, and now you're never gonna do it
no,
again, right?
yeah. Hmm. I'd say like, I mean, it's not like a huge mistake. Trying to find like from like a marketing standpoint or like creating content, or this is probably not as like, I don't know, existential or anything, some like big life lesson, but um made tons of like, I could have made better things, I guess.
Right.
um Whether it's like as simple as like a Facebook post, and like you're learning of how to market yourself, and you're like, okay, that was dumb.
Yeah,
When you
that
look
was
back
dumb.
on hindsight and you're like, why did I even think that was a good idea at the time? Or um so there'll always be things like that, and I'm sure there's things that I've recently posted or released or whatever that I'm going to look back and be like, I could have been better at that. But I think just being aware and learning from that is
Mm.
like being aware of and caring what you're doing, paying attention to the details, and um, not necessarily rushing, which I think I could get down that rabbit hole too. You get that you get excited about a project or whatever, and then you just throw all these ideas at it, and they end up coming out like 50%, instead of having that focus and like work ethic to like grind through and really get the best thing that you're capable of. And then, which I think is super important, you got to hold yourself to a high standard, and anything you do really. But um you know at the end of the day, it's like we're trying to create something special and unique, and that takes effort and a lot of hard work.
Takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being able to look around at the people around you and be like, okay, what are they doing? And then look around at people out of your area too. Cause
Yeah.
like you get in these little pockets of, they're like, okay, like I'm good enough for here. And it's like, yeah, cool. That's cool. But like, how can you go even further?
How can we make
You know?
here better?
Yeah. Go up. I mean, I used to play with Andy Mowatt's band. Um, and we would go up to New York City, and we'd drive up and play at Rockwood Music Hall at like 2 a.m., like the last slot of the night, and then drive straight home and pull in the driveway at like 6 a.m. when the sun's coming up. But like the other bands that would play were so good. I mean, we played great. I had a lot of fun playing with them. But then you're up there and you're like, wow, these guys are killing it too. And it just really opens your mind to like, where you can go and how good other people are, and then just always striving for that and kind of like supporting each other and challenging each other too in the local scene so that everybody can, we just help each other grow and healthy competition, I guess, in a way, but just like,
Yeah, it's just healthy growth requires a little bit of competition.
yeah,
Granted, I don't
friendly competition.
yeah. No one's over here cutting people's. It's not cutthroat around here,
No,
right?
no.
It's very much open. It's very much, come on, join us. Well,
Yeah.
people are very much willing to help each other out around here. And that's
Yeah.
what I really like about the Lancaster area or
Mhm.
Central PA
Oh my
area,
gosh.
even.
Yeah.
Even if you go to an open mic or an open jam, people will come up with like a harmonica, or they'll come up with a clarinet, or they'll come up with a trombone, and people say, "Hey, come on, join in. We're doing this, and that song. Here's what it starts on."
Yeah. I mean, there's so many incredible musicians around here and like world class people that like live here and then they go out and tour. Like
Yeah.
they're around.
If you've seen half my like a lot of my roster is
Yeah.
incredible musicians
Yeah.
just living here, Grammy Award winners, Broadway stars,
Mm-hmm.
all these incredible people that
Yeah,
just
for sure.
are based here.
Yeah. And here I am, just some guy from York that plays saxophone.
And and you get to play with these people.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's cool. We live in a special place, and the ability that we can get to a lot of. It's not like we're in Hawaii or something. Like DC and Philly, New York,
Even Pittsburgh,
Boston.
not that
Like
far away.
there's a lot of big happening music towns that are like just,
Drivable.
and I could get there if I left right now. Like I could get there this afternoon, kind of thing.
Right.
So like we're in a really fortunate place that like we've got all this around us that.
That's why it's such a
Mhm.
hotbed for incredible.
Yeah.
All those New York, their vacation home is here.
Yeah.
Because rent's cheap.
Yep. Yep.
So, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started?
I think the just like the idea of grinding through stuff that might
The same thing.
feel uncomfortable, or having that focus to sit down and like, okay, like I might be getting tired or frustrated with this thing. And sometimes when you're in the studio recording, you know, the other day I was recording something with Bobby for that Tiffany's project that we're putting together, and we were just writing stuff on the fly, and I had multiple horns, so I was transposing. I had some ideas written out initially for tenor, but like, okay, now I've got to create a harmony to that, but I'm going to use the Barry, but the Barry's a fourth away. So there's so much that you're thinking in the moment while also trying to create something super special.
Mm-hmm.
That like you just have to you got to grind through that and not just be like, okay, that was good enough. And then surrounding yourself with people that will push you so that you get there. And when times kind of like, you're at the gym, you're bench pressing, and you're like, I think that's good. That's probably fine. I'm good at 6, but you've got like someone there that's like, come on, keep going. Like you've got more in you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that learning that, being able to push past that uncomfortable point to get something cool is a really good skill to have and learn.
There's a balance there too. There's a point to where you want to be pushed. You don't want to overdo it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you can have a bad experience.
Yeah.
There's times that like I've recorded certain sections and like it's taken me longer than in my head I feel like I should have had, or took me longer than it should have taken. But so then you can leave and kind of feel defeated. Especially like in the studio, you learn a lot about your playing and a lot about your sound and everything, and that's like it's a good kick in the butt to like
And
what you need to work on.
Another thing one should learn is that you can always take a small break and come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Clear your head, move on to a different section.
Yeah.
Come back to it later when you've calmed down, relaxed, because a clear mind fixes a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is just the mental aspect of it, is being in a clear headspace is super important in anything, but when you're trying to work and focus that closely, it's like you got to take care of what's up here
first.
Get all that organized.
Creativity can burn out as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Last thing.
Yeah.
What is one of the worst or funniest things that ever happened to you on a gig? Surely you haven't ever dropped a saxophone.
No.
That's good.
I mean, I did have my sax stand break. That was probably last year, and my saxophones fell over on stage, but nothing broke. Yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, I've done a gig once. Well, I was just kind of like sitting in, and probably this isn't a fun story, but probably a good, I don't know, it was a good life lesson for me, but I was asked to sit in. It was like this jazz gig, and yeah, they were doing chord changes. I was trying to hear it, and just couldn't hear the changes necessarily, and I think it might have been in an uncomfortable key, and I ended up not playing well, and I was really bummed out. Nobody probably noticed, at least to most people. They didn't care, but it's like the musicians you were playing with are like at a really high level, and so yeah, kind of feeling defeated, and that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned some limitations. So that's just information that you've learned about your playing, about yourself. Now you've got that, and yeah, now you've got a place to
work on.
Yeah, you got a goal to shoot for then, or something that at least know you should avoid maybe in the future, or like know that, okay, I'm not quite ready to do something like that, so I'm gonna pump the brakes first. So yeah,
never be afraid of failure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Don't feel bad because you failed.
Yeah, because that keeps you from so many opportunities if you
does.
just say like, I'm okay. Like, don't be afraid to fail.
And
because you will.
You will. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna be embarrassing.
And it's everybody's been through it, and that's another great part about it is that every musician has been through that, and they're not gonna knock you.
No.
If you mess up once, right?
Yep.
Because everybody messes up sometimes. It's not the end of the world. And here's another mistake a lot of musicians make. If you mess up, don't overthink it. Forget about it. Keep going. If you dwell on that one mistake, you're going to make mistakes the entire night.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I need to work on too. If I make a mistake, I definitely ruminate on that. I get stuck. I'm like, I wish I would do that. That's the perfectionist thing in me.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to break because, yeah, I mean, it's like baseball. If you have a really bad at bat, and you come in your next at bat and you're like, I keep striking out, and why am I doing this? Why am I swinging at these pitches? And you're in your head, you're going to do the same thing.
Yep.
So, and it's not saying it's easy. You can't just say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. But it's not that easy, but you can work on that. And that's something that I definitely need to, because I hold myself sometimes to a high, maybe unrealistic standard at times. But being aware of that and working on it, yeah.
Just try to be the best that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all that really matters.
Yes.
With all that said, make sure you find Logan Kurtek at all of his places in the description. If you want to check out Right Coast Recording, please be sure to check out them. All their stuff as well is also in the description.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, we're going to be putting on an episode I had with Luther Tyree. Then Monday, we're going to be having on Ben Oakes, Sir Dominic Jordan, and Circumstantial Saint. They are a few spoken word artists around Lancaster. They're doing incredible youth work.
Nice.
I'm excited to talk to them about that. If you want to follow that and all updates and guests, please be sure to check out our Facebook at facebook.com/The Story Corey Rosen, CORYROSEN. You can find that. Search that up anywhere else you do your streaming and watching of videos or listening to audio. And if you really want to support us, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, leave us a rating. It really does help us out. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. And do you want to leave them on one more track?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We do have one more track. Yeah.
But I appreciate you having me on here. This was a really cool experience that, to be a list of that. A lot of people I respect are on your podcast list. And I'm like, to be one of them was cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
But we're going to leave you with one more song from Bobby's record. I don't want to play all of them because he's got to get on here at some point and play his tracks and talk about them. But this is Disease, and we'll be playing it tomorrow at the Hot Air Balloon Festival. So see you there.
And that was Disease by Bobby Gentilo. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye.